This Week in History with Mike and Will. I am Mike.
I'm Will.
And I am Mike.
And I am Will.
And we shall continue to be.
Yes.
And what we do is every week, Will looks up an event that took place this week in history, researches
it.
And comes back here and he's got 1 hour to explain it to me.
Yeah, like sands through the hourglass. Those
Just
are the
like
days of our history.
Sands through the hourglass. And then I learned stuff, and so do you. We actually, though, before we move on to this first the event for today, we have some actuallys from last episode.
Yes.
The death of Ayla.
Yeah, the death of Ayla. So Ayla was the Anglo-Saxon English king fella.
Yeah.
And Erica chimed in, as she does, which is awesome. I mentioned Reeves as a job in England, and I think I said they're like a sheriff, but actually a sheriff is a reeve, and she pointed out that the word sheriff comes from a shire reeve. So a reeve's in charge of an area, and England's kind of split into these shires. So a shire reeve is the reeve of the entire shire. So awesome. Thank you for that, Erica. And then also she pointed out that Ivar the Boneless and Oba are in a video game called Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which I love and have played entirely too much of. And Ivar definitely is more of the immune to pain version of Ivar the Boneless that we talked about. He gets set on fire. He gets thrown off a cliff. He lives through all that. He's just very hard to kill. And then Oba is a love interest, a possible love interest for the main character. So
I love getting my history from video games.
Yeah, some of it is accurate and lots of it is not.
Your mileage may vary.
Yes.
All right.
But the reconstructions in a lot of those games are pretty darn neat.
Oh, cool.
So that's one thing that's cool about it. All right.
Well, thanks, Erica.
Thanks, Erica.
We enjoy feedback, and we enjoy conversations with people. So keep them coming if you got a comment to make.
Yeah, comments, suggestions, questions.
But we are moving from Europe to Southern Europe.
Northern Africa.
Northern Africa.
Egypt is in Africa. Allegedly.
All right. We're moving there to Saladin.
Yes.
Saladin?
Saladin.
Saladin.
Yes.
Becomes the Vizier.
The Vizier, yes, of Egypt.
Of Egypt.
Last week, that's another actually. Last week I said that this one would be, he becomes the Emir. An Emir is a commander, a Vizier is a, administrative leader of an entire area. It's kind of like an Emir can also be the Vizier, but kind of a thing like...
And a brazier is for bazooms.
Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome. 1 hour to explain.
Yes.
All this Vizier stuff. Ready?
Yes, ready. I probably should have waited to explain it till my time started. So, Salah al-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub was born sometime in 1137 or 1138. We don't know exactly because he wasn't famous yet, so nobody cared.
Gotta be famous when you're born if you want us to remember you.
Now, the reason his name is so long is because actually Salah al-Din, that's Saladin is what we call it in English, but Salah al-Din is actually a title. It's like a cognomen, kind of being called the Lion-Hearted. What it means is honor of the faith, which is a pretty cool honorific in Islamic culture to be called the honor of the faith. Yeah. So his actual name is Yusuf. Which
Joey.
Is Joseph. So
hey, Joey.
And Ibn Ayyub means son of Ayyub. Ibn is son of. Ibn. So almost every Muslim name at this time, or at least the Arabic Muslims, they're Yusuf ibn Ayyub, and then it's Ayyub ibn... I forget his father. They don't talk much about his dad, and then it goes on and on and on and on.
Just like you have Johnson and
Peterson. Exactly. That's what it is. Because and if you look at Icelandic names, that's how they all look. It's Bjorn Bjornsson if his father's Bjorn, and then if he has a kid, then he'd be Sven Bjornsson, and then there'd be Snorri Svensson. They just keep going down and down and down.
But you get
the last name changes.
Oh, okay.
At least it used to. I think nowadays they preserve it how we do in America and most Western countries.
So someone won.
Yeah. That way you can kind of keep the family name and people can go, oh.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, Saladin's father was kind of a minor noble, kind of a mover and shaker in his area. And he controlled a fortress. He was the warden of a fortress. Yeah. And at one point, he aided a fellow named Nur ad-Din.
Is it all in Egypt?
No. So I should have said that.
Yeah,
so Saladin was born in Tikrit, which is in Iraq. So he's not even in Egypt yet, and he's actually Kurdish, which is cool. So Kurds are a nomadic people who are an ethno group within the Middle East, who live in Turkey. They live in Iraq, Syria, I think, Afghanistan. They have a huge chunk of land that is referred to locally as Kurdistan. But if you call it Kurdistan in any of those countries, you might get in a lot of trouble. There's modern day huge issues between the Kurds and Turkey, for example.
Yeah. Is that because they were a nomadic people, so they never really sent down, like, well, this is Kurdistan?
Yeah.
Is it, though? You all keep wandering around it.
Yeah. It's kind of like we live here, and we've always lived here, and just because we didn't build giant fortresses and kill everybody around us.
Nope, I'm sorry. That's the way we do things.
Yep. So
build a fort, plant a flag, kill the people.
Pretty much.
Then you get to keep the
It's
land.
nice to know that it's not just the English who do that.
That's true.
Like everybody does that.
Everyone does.
So yeah, there's
Not good enough to pee in the corners.
exactly.
You gotta build
Or
a fort.
have your, herds and flocks.
Sure.
That doesn't count. But yeah, so Kurdistan is a big chunk, like all of northern Iraq is Kurdistan. It's part of Kurdistan.
Okay.
Kurds run it. It's a whole separate group. Okay. And he is a Sunni Muslim. Now, there's two main factions of Islam. And then they have some little sub-factions, and then there's some very small, even split-off factions. But the main ones are the Sunni and the Shia. And just to really give it a bare-bones difference, because there are a lot of small differences, but the major difference is when the Prophet Muhammad died, the Sunnis believe he did not give a specific heir to his, not reign, but leadership of the faith.
Yeah.
He did not have a named successor. And the Shia believe that he had a named successor, and it was his son-in-law. And then, ever since then, there's been a factional disagreement.
Oh.
They have some of the same titles for people, like an imam, but within Sunni culture, an imam he's a religious leader, like a priest who runs the mosque. But for a Shia to have an imam, he has to be able to trace his family lineage to Muhammad somehow. So it's very complicated, and it's a lot more detailed than that. And I would have to do like 7 hours just to explain all the differences and.
Well, no wonder they're in constant conflict.
Yes.
Then.
So it's very much
nothing breeds conflict. I've found, like subtleties.
Yes, yes. Like to say that it's the difference between Catholics and Protestants is not accurate because it's the differences. Some of them are very, very subtle, but important to the practitioners of the faith. Now, it's not a 50-50 split either. The majority of Muslims are Sunni, like 90%.
Oh.
And then the Shia make up the rest. The number I saw was 85 to 90%. I was like, that's like tens of millions of people, though, because there's like 1.5 billion Muslims on the planet. So a 5% shift is a huge number of people. Yeah. So I thought that was a little awkward that they didn't have that specifically named. And then there's different opinions on like orthodoxy and all this. Some people have said that the Sunnis are the more orthodox faith, but that's like a kind of an insulting term to both faiths because that means that, one is like more hardcore or one is wrong and one is right or anything like that. And as a non-Muslim, that's not something I should get involved in.
We don't know nothing.
But the point being, the main difference is that the belief splits from succession of Muhammad.
Okay.
So it's very important because typically a government doesn't mix those two things. So our area that we're in is all Sunnis running the show. Yeah. There are Shia, but they're majority Sunni people. And this is going to come in later. So I believe the caliph of the area, so there's a caliphate. A caliphate is it is a powerful religious leader who controls a wide swath of land. A caliphate is supposed to be a purely Muslim run and led region, and it is controlled by the caliph, who is like kind of this, I'd say like a pope, to give somebody like an understanding of the level of power that a caliph is supposed to have, is like a pope. Okay. Is very, very the boss. Yeah. And there's rival caliphates. Like not every Muslim gets along There's different countries within it. So the unfortunate thing with this period of history, because most of our understanding in the West and Europe comes from the European view, where a lot of them thought they were all the same.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And like they're totally different.
I say all these people's skin colors are the same.
Yes.
Probably the same.
And they're not even that either. Like they all look very different. It's a gajillion cultures. There's different.
I was squinting.
Yes, yes, that's the thing. And
They're
they
all
don't
in
have
this general
spyglasses
area.
either. The Europeans didn't have that stuff. The Arabs did. But that's the thing. Like there's the difference between the Arabs. There's the difference between Syrians, Egyptians, Turks. It's a huge cultural difference. And then you have the Kurds thrown into it, like we have with Saladin.
True.
So the caliphate that runs this part is the Abbasids, I believe. And then the Egyptians are the Fatimids. Now, Fatima was the daughter of Muhammad. So their leaders can trace their lineage back to her.
Ah, okay.
When
When was Muhammad around?
Oh, I don't want to get this wrong, but I think he died in the late 600s.
Okay.
So that was about when he was around.
Okay.
It was in the 600s when that was, and then it just spread fast.
Sure.
It was very, very fast. I should have gotten the exact date because I was like, what questions is Mike going to ask, and what do I want to know? And I was like, that's kind of a big one.
I'm sure someone will correct us.
Hopefully. I could look on my phone, but that would take
No time.
That would take 30 seconds.
No
The
time.
clock is ticking.
This conversation already is up.
So while huge foundational important character of our story, not the central focus.
Right.
Our focus is Saladin. So he was raised in Damascus, Syria, because that was the area that was led by this Nur ad-Din fellow who liked Saladin's father because he bailed him out once. He helped him.
Okay.
Nur ad-Din was coming back from a campaign, and Ayub, what was the father's name?
Ayub?
Yeah, it's Yusuf ibn Ayub.
Ayub.
Ayub. Ayub. Assisted Nur ad-Din in like crossing a river and gave him kind of a sanctuary thing. Then he got in trouble and kicked out, and apparently Saladin was born during his flight from his lands.
Oh.
And then
What a bumpy birth.
yes, and then Nur ad-Din basically took them in and gave him a position of power.
Okay.
So Saladin was raised in Damascus. Damascus at the time is one of the greater cities of the region. It has these beautiful.
Still around, right?
Oh
It's
yeah,
still around,
Damascus
yeah.
is the capital of Syria.
I've heard that word.
Yes. And like Damascus steel, that's a really popular type of steel. They use acid etching on it, so it's the metal with like the really cool, looks like intricate scroll work.
Oh, yeah.
But what that is like an acid wash that shows all of the hammer points and folds in the metal. So it's really, really neat. And that was a distinct thing that they did there.
Oh.
So Nur ad-Din runs this, and he's basically taken in this family to be part of his, not household, but they work for him. They're given station. And while being raised here, we don't know a ton about Saladin's life back at this point because he's just a kid. And he hadn't yet risen to greatness. Up until this point, that could have been the end of the story, as Ayub did a nice thing for a guy who becomes king.
Well, thanks for coming this week in history.
This week in history. That's done.
I got some more time.
I got a little more time. But he apparently, in this young part of his life, like fell in love with the gardens at Damascus. He just loved them. He thought it was the coolest thing. They were so nice, so pretty, and he just loved to spend his time there.
No, that is not the hanging gardens of
Babylon? No, those are gone. Good job. Well, Babylon died. That's where modern day Baghdad is.
Okay.
Modern day Baghdad is Babylon. It's built on top of it.
Okay.
So Saladin was a good student. He could speak Kurdish. He could speak Turkish. I think he understood or could speak Arabic.
And a little bit of Dutch.
And some Dutch. So he was multilingual, which was important then, because leading Muslims believed that education is key. So he would know mathematics, maybe a little bit of astronomy, and definitely very studious about Islam. So he could like recite famous poems of the time, religious treatises of the time. He knew like, because poetry is huge in Muslim faith, like that's just part of the entire culture. So having a good poet, you'd want to know the cool poems of the time. It's kind of like it's like a next level of being able to sing your favorite song.
Okay,
But
sure.
a lot of these are like commentaries on life, on faith. Sometimes they're adventure stories, and there's usually like grains of wisdom packed into it. So he could recite these things. He studied this stuff when he was a kid. And a lot of that was considered like a, if you were really a good Muslim, if you're a really good leader in their culture, you could recite those things. You would know those nuggets of wisdom.
Yeah.
As opposed, and also be able to fight or be an administrator or a religious leader. It was important to be a well-rounded individual.
Yeah.
That was like a tenet of faith and culture. So he's raised in this lifestyle. Could have gone either way. Could have done whatever. And at one point, Nur-ad-Din is...
Nur-ad-Din?
Nur-ad-Din. Oh. N-U-R space lowercase a-d dash capital D-I-N. Nur-ad-Din.
Nur-ad-Din.
And his name means light of the faith. So he's a big deal.
Sure.
He inherited rule of Syria from his father Zengi. Zengi was a badass, to put it lightly. He was a conqueror. He was a warlord. He was considered a great enemy of the Crusader states. They were terrified of him because by this point, the Crusaders had captured Jerusalem in 1099. And when they captured it, they butchered every single Muslim they found. They butchered every single person they found in the city.
Just to preserve them for the Lord?
Yep. And bear in mind, at the time, Jerusalem was filled with Muslims, Jews, and Christians. So they killed everybody. They did not spare anyone. Apparently, the blood ran ankle high in some places.
Yeah.
So, good job preserving the faith. So this shocked the Muslim world. Like, that was horrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, it should have shocked everybody.
Sure.
That's horrifying. It depopulated a city. Like, anytime, that's like Genghis Khan type stuff, and he's not even around yet. And he probably saw that and was like, don't do that. Ugh. But like Attila the Hun would do things like that. That's horror show
But
stuff.
the news of that did not spread? That did not...
Well, that spread throughout the Muslim world that these guys are monsters. Yeah. There were stories about Crusaders just murdering children, roasting them, eating them. There were acts of barbarism. And I'm not saying one side or the other because I'm certain that their rivals did bad stuff too.
But also in the relative stance of human existence, it wasn't that long ago.
No. Yeah. At this point, what we're talking about, so he's born in 1137. So this is less than 40 years ago. This super important religious city was massacred.
Yeah.
And the war...
Well, I meant not that far from now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this isn't...
Relatively speaking.
Yeah, relatively speaking, it's not. Yeah. It's not that long ago. But this is like recent memory. And the thing is, the Crusaders then established a nation-state, several nation-states, several kingdoms throughout the coast there. They call it the Levant. We call it a lot of times the Holy Land. But that's where like modern-day Israel, Jordan... places like that, that's where they're established. And they control it, and there's constant warfare with their neighbors. Sometimes they forge alliances with the Muslims next to them and work together against a common foe. Other times they fight each other. It's just constant war.
Yeah, the Lord works in mysterious ways.
Yep. Nothing says, you follow the teachings of Jesus, who was a pacifist, like murdering people. That's
for their own good.
Yeah, kill them for their own good. You got to save them by killing them.
That's right.
So that's going on, and this is the life that Saladin is raised to believe or to see. Now, Nur-ad-Din has a beef, understandably, with the kingdom of Jerusalem. That's the main kingdom. For a while, it was ruled by Baldwin III. Now, Baldwin was considered a great king. He was a warrior king, and Nur-ad-Din had great respect for him, even though they were constant military rivals. They fought all the time, but he respected him. And when Baldwin died, Nur-ad-Din was very respectful and said, they lost a great prince. We should grieve with them.
Oh,
because he was a good man and a great man, even though we disagree. Kind of.
Okay.
Because that's how you treat people honorably.
Sure.
Back in the day, you could, even if you're trying to murder each other, you can be respectful. That was their viewpoint. That was the warrior philosophy of the good warriors of the time.
Rommel, you magnificent bastard! I've read your book.
Yes, Patton. Very good.
Unrelated to this.
Unrelated, but also totally related. Rommel, you magnificent. I forgot about that. Oh, George C. Scott, brilliant. Well, now I'm just gonna picture Nur-ad-Din as George C. Scott.
All right.
Which, if the movie had been made a while ago, it probably would have. They would have just brown-faced him like they did with Tony Quinn in, was that Lawrence of Arabia, where they made him an Arab?
Oh, yeah.
And Tony Quinn is
not
Arabic.
Wasn't John Wayne?
I don't want to talk about that one. That was bad. Or Alec Guinness was an Arab prince as well in Lawrence of Arabia, I think. That was also really, really bad. They couldn't find an Arab guy in a world where they exist. Guess not.
You can't find it if you don't look.
You cannot. At least they got Omar Sharif. He's at least from that part of the world.
His name at least sounds like it's...
I think he's Egyptian. So they got one guy. One guy.
Maybe they put him in charge of finding another guy.
Yeah, and then he's just like, I can't. I don't know. I don't actually know any Arabs. So, after Baldwin dies, he's replaced by Amalric, Amalric, the first. And he becomes king of Jerusalem, and he's kind of a jerk. He makes and breaks alliances left and right.
Oh, don't do that. That gets you killed.
It does. He's like a less effective Lubu. Okay. Like if Lubu wasn't a good warrior, he'd be Amalric. That's about where we're at with this guy. Now Amalric has a weird relationship with Egypt. Egypt is led by the Fatimid Caliphate, which I mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. They are rivals, but somewhat kind of allies with, like, the whole concept of Muslim kingdoms at this time is they are political rivals and sometimes usually religious allies. So they oftentimes will ally together to fight the Crusaders.
Oh, sure.
But because they're political rivals, they'll fight as well against each other. And because there's rivaling caliphates over this, the Fatimids and the Abbasids don't like each other because they're rivals for control over each other's territory and spiritual followers. Plus, they're Shia, and these other guys are Sunnis. So there's all sorts of reasons for Egypt to not get along with everybody else. Yeah. And at this time, like growing up, being taught this and studying like the Crusades as a kid, I just thought they were all the same people.
Well,
they are
strange,
not remotely close to the same. Now, of course, I was raised in a Catholic school. Yeah. So they were just like, Crusaders are the good guys, and the Muslims are the bad guys. And they called them the Saracens, and they lumped them all together.
With all history. Consider the source.
Exactly. Now, what's cool is for a lot of this, Saladin hired biographers. Write down my life.
Do it.
Some of it
make me look good, but not too good.
It's interesting because it's not overly like his stories. The ones that are actually like about his life are usually not embellished much. Oh. They're just like, this happened. He did this. He did this. He did this. They never say like they're very respectful of the things he does. And they say a lot about like how God is guiding him and all of these things. But they're never like, Saladin stood on top of a hill and killed 10,000 men with his bare hands and then crushed the Christians and he was the greatest thing ever. They're just like, he did these things. And all the Christians are like, he did those things. But we're not there yet.
Yeah, okay.
We're not there yet. So, this is one of the wildest bits of Saladin's story, and he's only a minor character in it, unfortunately. So Amalric is kind of sworn as the protector of Egypt, even though they're Muslim and he's Christian. Okay, so the Kingdom of Jerusalem's like, we'll protect you guys from your rivals. But also he wants to conquer it because Egypt is wealthy. So Egypt is a total mess. Like a total political mess. There are religious rifts between the leadership. Their leaders are split between the religious faithful leader and then the top administrator. So you have the Caliph, who's, like I said, kind of like the Pope. Yeah. And then there is the Vizier. And a Vizier is supposed to be the top administrator, the guy who runs the day-to-days and runs the country and leaves all of the spiritual stuff and overall guidance and leadership to the Caliph. Now, the last time there was an adult Caliph is in 1147, and after that, it's all kids. So they're weak.
Kids, you hear that? You're weak.
Children. So we're in like the 1160s era now. This is where we're at. So Saladin is older now. Yeah. And he's starting to get to this point where they're like, we got to give you a job. You need to have a position, and then you can pursue some kind of position either in the military. And he doesn't really want to be in the military. He prefers. He's a man of faith, so he really wants to pursue being maybe a cleric of some kind, rising through that, or being maybe a poet, because he's a thinking man. Like that's more of his speed. Yeah, okay. His uncle, on the other hand, is amazing. And his name, I want to pronounce it properly, is Shirkuh. Shirkuh, which is S-H-I-R-K-U-H is how we spell it. Shirkuh is a badass Kurd. He's a Kurdish warrior. He is famous for single-handedly fighting a powerful, they called them Franks. They were the crusaders.
Okay.
He fought Raymond. I don't remember his last name, but he fought a leader of a Frankish army in hand-to-hand combat, like sword to sword, and killed him. He leads armies. He's a soldier. He's famous for being generous. Like he does not crave wealth. He does not crave power. He fights for the cause that he's given. Okay. He's also a really little round guy. Oh. He's recorded repeatedly as being fat. Fat. But also he has this crazy level of endurance where he just handles hardship like it's no big deal. Oh. Pain and hardship don't bother the guy, but he loves to eat.
Okay, well,
which is fine. You gotta have your vice, right?
Sure.
You gotta have your vice. Better to have it be that than genocide or something. Like that's an okay vice. Eating a lot. He likes rich meats. That's what they say. He likes to eat rich food. That's his thing. Sure, that won't cause him problems later on in life when we don't have any kind of treatments for diabetes and things like that. No problem. So
he's probably dead by now.
Shirkuh, though, is a fierce warrior. He's very much in touch with his old school roots of being nomadic warrior folk. His tribe has only recently become more civilized and become part of this caliphate and the Syrian government. So he's considered kind of like a little barbarian guy who just, if you need something done, he'll do it. And he starts to become Nur ad-Din's right-hand man. He's like his top general. It's like if something needs to be done, you'll send Shirkuh to do it, and he will handle it.
Nice. You need a guy like that.
Shirkuh wants his nephew to be taken care of. So he's like, Yosef, I got a job for you. You're going to work in my army, and whatever Nur ad-Din wants us to do, we're going to do it. In 1164, Nur ad-Din is approached by the Vizier of Egypt. His name is Shawar. Shawar is infamous in history, and we're going to find out why. But Shawar was just kicked out of his position.
Oh, so there's an opening.
He was kicked out by a fellow named Dirgham. Dirgham he's the new Vizier. There was a battle where Amalric, king of Jerusalem, invaded, and he won. And basically, a bunch of people within the court were like, well, you suck as Vizier because you lost the battle. You're out. Amalric wasn't able to finish off the victory and conquer Egypt, but he won the battle and then was like, I got to go home, which is basically his entire military career. He gets partway into Egypt and then he has to go home.
My mom said, when the street lights come on, I gotta go.
Honestly, it feels like that. It's like, I can go this far, and as long as the sun doesn't, it's getting dark. Oh God. I guess I'll play with you guys tomorrow.
See ya.
You guys are lucky. Pedals his little bike.
And you know how hard it is to bike in the sand.
Yep, and in armor with a little lance.
Sure. Poor guy.
So Shawar comes to Nur ad-Din because he's the powerhouse of the Gaza, Syria area, and they're the neighbors. And he's like, so I got kicked out of my house, and I'd like to get back inside. Can you guys kick the door down for me?
Please.
Please. And Nur ad-Din does not want to get involved, because if he leaves Syria, then Amalric and the other Crusader states are going to attack his lands and mess with him, and it's just going to cause him a headache.
Yep, can't go.
So he doesn't want to do that. Shirkuh says, I got this. You send me there with an army, and I will hold Egypt for you. I will handle all of this, and then we get to kind of run the caliphate from the inside.
Oh, he seems a little too eager to me.
He's like, we'll be the power. You'll be the power, but it'll be us. I'll do it, but I'll kick, you'll get all the money and all the glory. And Nur ad-Din's like, yeah, that's a good idea. Plus, Shirkuh's never been anything but loyal. He's a fierce warrior, and he figures, I'll send him. That'll take care of it.
Okay.
Shirkuh doesn't.
I've heard about these fierce warriors before.
Yeah. So Shirkuh takes young Saladin with him. At the time, let's see, it's 1137.
I just want to write poems.
So he's like 20. He's like he's in his early 20s.
I just want to write poems.
I just want to write poems. He's now he's Liverpoolian. Now he's Liverpoolian. I just want to write and sit in my garden in the shade. I'd like to be writing poetry in a Damascus garden in the shade.
It's very inaccurate.
I think so. But how nice would that have been for Yusuf to just be like, oh man, I'm just going to sit under this fruit tree and eat fruit and write poetry all day. That's kind of what he wanted.
I mean, that's good life goal in general.
Well, the Crusader states wish he would have done that because when All right, so Shirkuh takes Saladin with him, and they go with Shawar into Egypt, and immediately start setting about beating the snot out of Crusaders, and they fight Dirgham, the guy who took over the Vizier ship, in the field, and they kill him. And Shawar's like, yeah, I'm the Vizier again. Woo. Get out of my country. And he kicks Shirkuh out of Egypt.
Oh.
Because he was like, well, so I did the, you guys conquered, thanks very much. I'd like to finish conquering. What do you want for it? And Shirkuh basically gives him a price tag. Well, if we're going to be working for you basically as mercenaries, you have to kick money back to Nur ad-Din, or we're not going to keep fighting for you. He says, that's too much. Hey, Amalric, you want to be buddies? So Shawar then goes to the king of Jerusalem for aid against Shirkuh, the guy he asked for help. So he switches teams.
Oh boy.
So first he gets kicked out.
Yeah.
Then he gets this guy to help him. Then that guy, he doesn't like that guy anymore. So then he goes to the Christians and he's like, you guys help me. So Amalric comes to attack Shirkuh in his fortress.
Okay.
And he was already on the way because Dirgham asked Amalric to show up and help fight Shirkuh. So Amalric's like, where am I going? Who am I punching? All right, here I am. And he's about to besiege a city, and Shirkuh sends his nephew, Yusuf Saladin, to withdraw as many supplies from the city as possible. It's called Bilbais. And
the city is called
Bilbais. He grabs all the stuff he can and leaves, and the Crusaders sack the city and loot it of all the goods, and then they're like, yeah, we did it. And as they're leaving Egypt, Shirkuh catches up to them. There's a big battle.
Hey guys.
And we're like, at the time, we're not talking like tens of thousands of guys.
Sure.
There's like, Shirkuh's got like 2,000 men, and the Crusaders have like 400 or 500, and most of them are knights. The battle it was called the Battle of Al-Babain. Al-Babain.
Sounds like a bouncy little battle.
Yep. Well, actually, it kind of was. They kept bouncing all over the place, fighting each other. One guy wrote about it as like the greatest military victory of all time. But actually...
This is my first story.
Yes. Actually, Shirkuh lost more men and technically won the battle. So he won a battlefield victory, but wasn't able to capitalize on it, wasn't able to pursue Amalric's forces, wasn't able to wipe them out, so it wasn't really a total victory.
The greatest of all time.
Yes, and he's probably talking it up because this is Saladin's first bit of command. In the battle, Saladin is given, there are two versions of what happens. He either is commander of the baggage train, and his job is to look vulnerable and lure in the Crusaders to attack the baggage, which is a commonplace thing for people to attack the baggage train because then you get all their food, all their loot,
all their Louis Vuitton
supplies. Yeah, you get the coach bags. Yep, and then you take them away on a choo-choo train. That's how it works. So his job is either that, or he was the commander of one of the wings of the army, I think the right wing, which is usually like a position of importance. The right flank is a big deal.
Oh, yeah. Most people are right-handed.
Yeah, that's probably it. So whatever happened, Saladin did what he was supposed to do quite well. Shirkuh said he did a really good job, and he didn't die. So that's usually the main decider. Did you do a good job? You won the battle and you didn't die. You did your job. Good job. So whatever happened, the Crusaders attacked. They were outmaneuvered, and then it turned into this crazy running battle in a bunch of little valleys. Almost all of the guys are just galloping around fighting each other. It was just crazy. And by the time the dust settled, they were like, who won?
No, you did? No.
Well, the Crusaders all went that way, and we're still here. So, yay! They won. And Amalric's forces retreat back to Jerusalem. So Shirkuh's like, well, guess we're in charge now.
Of this spot.
Guess we won. But he doesn't really have the forces to stick around and be the boss. So they have to go back to Syria and work for Nur ad-Din. Now, there was another version of this story that Shirkuh got caught up in Bilbais. He was besieged there by Amalric, and they had an agreement that if Amalric stopped the siege so that he could go back east, then Shirkuh could leave and go back east as well, and they'd be fine. That was just one. There was one version of the story that I read. So I just want to include that in case anybody of our 60 watchers sees this is like, that's not out.
Sure.
Now, while this is all going on, Nur ad-Din knows that Amalric has left Jerusalem, so he attacks. And he's just attacking all over the place. He's just attacking towns and cities, and he's raiding and making Amalric not able to really stick around and conquer anything because his backyard's on fire. Like, he's like, I just left my house and you set it on fire. And he has to keep running back and jumping back and forth from Egypt to Gaza to Gaza to Egypt to Egypt to Gaza.
It sounds like he spread himself too thin in the first place.
He did. And yeah, he's trying to do this conquest thing of a region that already like pays him.
Yeah.
So it's weird because he probably knows he can't beat Nur ad-Din like solidly, but maybe if he can consolidate power in Egypt, then he can win there. Now, Egypt is a really valuable territory. A lot of us nowadays, we think of Egypt as a desert, largely. You know, we always see the Sphinx and the pyramids. It's all desert. But it's a breadbasket. The area around the Nile is incredibly fertile.
The Fertile Crescent?
The Fertile Crescent is, I think that whole chunk.
I think it's part of it, yeah.
And the Nile is huge and a great source of fresh water. Also, trade is booming right now. Like, a bunch of smaller towns are springing up. And it's interesting because the main weak spot of this caliphate is that it's really disorganized, which means that there's a lot more freedom of people from other cultures to come in and be there and then trade. So while they're run badly at the top, economically they're doing really well.
Oh, sure.
Because all of these different organizations and groups are coming in, and there's not somebody coming in saying, nope, you all have to be of this culture and this thing and do like this and do like this. Wow. It's very free trade. It's a little chaotic, but it's very
Get rid of all regulations. I hear you. Got it.
Not exactly. But
I wrote it down.
That's what you wrote. Okay. Also, this bothered me, so I have to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's two forms of wealth they have. Tons of food and a booming trade. Also what they refer to as a man-made gold mine.
Ooh.
The pharaohs had vast fortunes put in their tombs. So a hugely profitable way of getting money for the viziers is to loot the tombs.
Sure. Well, they're not using
so these guys. Well, yeah. So these guys started grave robbing to get all the gold and treasure, and they got super rich from it because they're just like, oh yeah, there's so much money in these. What's with the man-made mountain? Let's just get a pickaxe, dig in there, and steal all the crap. And they made a fortune from that. So that's three major sources of income. It just really bothered me that one of them was robbing dead people.
Well,
that's just, at the end of the day, that's what.
Not our fault they put it in the ground.
That's true. But the way it was phrased as a man-made gold mine, I just thought that was great. But a little disturbing. Like, guys, some dude's buried here. Oh, cool. That's... pay some respect. No. He's surrounded by gold. Look at all that's ivory. That's gold. Those are jewels. Here's a bunch of copper and bronze. Here's some statues made out of marble. This is awesome. Let's keep it. Then they did. And they weren't putting it in museums. They're probably melting a lot of... So it bothers me too because there's probably artifacts that were melted down or destroyed just for the wealth. And then that was turned into currency or coin or whatever they were using.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they made friends with that.
Yes. And, it didn't unleash a curse. So no Egypt.
As far as we know.
I think the mummies only start showing up in the 18 and 1900s. I think that's the rule.
Oh, yeah.
Once it's been, 2 millennia or whatever since they die. But luckily for these guys, the curse hadn't kicked in.
Oh,
so they're good.
Good.
Or maybe it does. Maybe it does because...
Might have been a more subtle curse. What is it?
Maybe it does because the Fatimid Caliphate doesn't last long after this.
Yep. That's how curses work.
That's how curses work.
The best ones you don't know what happening.
So that was 1164. All this chaos is going on. 1166, Shirkuh is sent back into Egypt.
Back you.
So he rides in with an army, and Amalric chases him. If he's going to Egypt, I'm going to Egypt.
All right. I think Amalric just needs to take the day off.
He really does need to take a breather. So he follows him like a year later and occupies Alexandria and Cairo, which are major cities, they're major ports. They're important, and makes a formal treaty with Shawar. Again, so they're back on the same side. And Shawar's like, yeah,
sure, why not?
We will give you money, and you will hold those cities, and we will kick Shirkuh in the face. And Amalric's like, cool. And then Nuruddin starts attacking him again. And he goes, I gotta go. And Amalric leaves with his armies.
Right.
So Shawar's like, I hate you. Okay, fine.
I don't want to. I don't know if I would want to work with this Amalric guy.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So Shawar's like, but you were, but I owe you. Why do I have to pay you for doing a job you're not doing? It's like a plumber who won't put in pipes, but he keeps demanding money. I hate you. This is your job. This is your only job. And he's like, I don't have a job. I'm a king. I do what I want. Ugh. Also, your god's wrong. Like, it's very petulant. But yeah, Amalric has to go back and deal with Nuruddin, who's just like a blight on his existence. Because Nuruddin is a great warrior and a great commander, and he's constantly keeping him destabilized. So, Shawar is sick of this crap. And then in 1168, Amalric attacks Egypt. He just invades it. He's like, you know what? I'm not even going to treat you like a tributary state. So this, I think, is his fourth actual invasion. Before all of the stuff with Shawar being kicked out and everything like that, Amalric has invaded Egypt before. That's why they were like a tributary state. So now that he comes in, he's like, I'm conquering it. I'm sick of this. So Shawar goes to Shirkuh and asks him for help. And Shirkuh's like, Are you serious? You hired me before, and then I did my job, and then you're like, I don't want to listen to you, and get out of my country. And then you tried to kill me, like a bunch.
Remember that?
Remember that? Sure, I'll help you out. It's cool.
Oh.
So Shirkuh does help out Shawar.
What a guy.
Shows up, immediately starts besieging like Crusader-held areas, and then they have a large battle, and he crushes Amalric. Awesome day. And then he conquers Egypt because he's sick of Shawar's crap.
Yeah.
He starts fighting off his armies, and then he besieges Cairo. Which is just awesome. He's just tired of him. So that's in January of 1169. So it takes him a little over like 6 months to a year to conquer the rest of everything. He wins, and then he immediately executes Shawar because he's sick of his crap.
Well, that is one way to end this.
I am tired of you switching sides and stabbing people in the back and doing all this crap and claiming that you're doing it for the Caliph and doing all this other crap. I'm done with you.
Bye.
You're dead. One version says that Saladin poisoned him or assassinated him, but Saladin's not in charge, so I don't think that happened.
Okay.
Shirkuh's in charge.
Shirkuh and Saladin working together?
Oh yeah, nephew and uncle. So he could have sent Saladin to kill him.
Yeah,
as like a sign of loyalty type thing. That would have been fine. But every other version I said he executed him.
Oh, okay.
So you wouldn't have an assassin for an execution.
Right.
That's sneaky. He would much publicly kill him. Probably. It's like, let this be a lesson to you. Nuruddin's in charge now. Dead. I mean, Nuruddin's totally not in charge. I'm independent of him. Because now Shirkuh is made Vizier. Go Shirkuh!
Yay!
January 1169. And then about a month later, he dies.
Oh, like how?
Oh, it's not great. He dies from quinsy. Quinsy, which is basically horrifically swollen and infected tonsils.
Ew.
He would have horrible bouts of indigestion from how he ate. He'd get gout. So he probably had complications from diabetes and other illnesses caused by...
Brought it on his own fat self.
Yes. Basically, he died from being fat. But, like, if this disease gets bad enough, your throat closes because it swells up, so it's hard to breathe. And it's apparently incredibly painful because the only ways to fix it are through antibiotics, which they don't have, steroid treatments, which they don't have, drinking a lot of water, which they do have, and draining the pus.
Which they could do.
Which basically means you're leaning forward because you can't drink that. So, and that's the back of your throat. So that's just gross. Apparently he dealt with this for a long time, like years. He would just have bouts of quinsy. And he'd just
it sounds pleasant.
Yeah, it sounds great, right?
Well, the word quincy sounds nice.
Yeah, it sounds nice. It's quincy. It's like, whimsy.
Yeah.
It's no, it's terrible. I was looking at it, I was like, what is quincy? This sounds fine. Oh no, this is gross. I think the actual term for it, I think, is the shorthand is PTA, and it's I was reading about it, and it's just really nasty. There are pictures of it. It's gross. But basically they show the inside of the mouth, and it's just very, very red, and there's very small opening at the back of your mouth. So it's like hard to breathe. You're moving through the desert. He's a soldier. Yeah. But that's why he had this reputation of just being tough as nails, because he's dealing with all this crap that he did do to himself, but he just kind of grunted and dealt with it.
Yeah.
So that was very respected. And he's this pudgy little guy on a horse, and he's terrifying in combat, but he eventually dies. Now, he had a very clear plan for succession.
That's good.
Saladin. That's his boy.
Yeah.
That's his guy. He's been training him to be a replacement. His nephew has been fighting by his side, serving as his personal officer. He's been learning everything from Shirkuh. So while Saladin is respected for his mind and for his faith, Shirkuh also, he valued that. He didn't go, you're a wuss. That's very valuable stuff you're learning. But you also need to learn soldiering because it's very important for our family to maintain we have to stay valuable. Yeah. Nur-ad-Din has been very good to us. We stay valuable by serving him militarily. And this is what we do.
Words are nice, kid, but let's get that sword out.
Yep, exactly. So that's why he gave him positions of command. He gave him increasingly more important jobs. We see the rise of him through this career. And then he has the faith in him that he can take over after him. Now, Vizier is an elected position.
Oh.
So whatever Shirkuh wants isn't necessarily going to happen. So after Shirkuh dies, there's some finagling that has to happen. A bunch of people step forth as the Vizier. And it's all up to this fellow, Al-Adid, to choose. He's the caliph at the time. So now he's still pretty young. And at this point, Saladin is still in his 20s. He's not very old. And they think he's too young and he could be manipulated. So maybe he's a good pick as Vizier, because then you'll get to be the boss. Here's the other complex. He's a Sunni, and the caliphate is Shia. So for a Shia guy to pick a Sunni to be his Vizier is really, really weird. But also, he's got an army just sitting in your house. So there's a couple reasons why Saladin might have been chosen. One, basic intimidation.
Yeah.
Two, one of the more obsequious writers is oh, well, it was because Saladin was so great and so likable and such a wonderful man and a brilliant commander, and of course he'd make the best choice.
What a guy.
Well, who's gonna pick you for that? Because then it puts you in charge. Then they're oh yeah, we just made a really strong leadership choice. That's not what we want. We kind of want a weaker Vizier so the caliph can start running things again.
Right.
And then another was that maybe we could get one over on him and he's easy to control. Whatever happened, Saladin proves to be an incredibly capable and intelligent leader. So
didn't see that coming, did you, boys?
No matter what the reason was, they picked him. Also, there's a big push within his group to have the Kurdish people in positions of authority as opposed to the Turkic people to be in control. So Nur-ad-Din is a Turk. He's called a Seljuk, Seljuk Turk. And that's chunks of Syria and modern-day Turkey and a huge swath of land over there. They're the classic horse archer nomadic folk. That's the Turks. And the Kurds and the Turks don't always get along, as we know even up until today. So they're a little shy about letting the Turks run things. They don't trust them because they think the Turks are always trying to get one over on the Kurds. through conquest or whatever else. And also, Saladin has this very strong sense of family bond. You are loyal to your family.
Yeah.
So one of the things he does after becoming vizier is he requests his father be sent to him so he can be by his dad.
Oh, where's his dad been this whole time?
His dad is, I think, in Baghdad at this point. Because he was sent from Baghdad. So he has to ask that for the permission, and his dad is sent there. And at, where is this? So that's 26th March, 1169. So that's the day of our event. Saladin is made the official vizier of Egypt.
Huzzah!
This is the highest position of authority he's ever gotten. This is a big deal. He's basically running a country.
You get the hat and everything.
Yes, I think. I actually looked. He didn't really get a hat. When he becomes vizier, he swears off drinking. He says, I will not drink, and I will swear off all finery. He stops wearing fancy clothes. And I will wear, he says, the robes of faith. So he basically just starts wearing kind of like plain black clothing for the rest of his life. Cool. Even though he's the most powerful guy in this country, he's like, because pursuit of wealth and, well, probably he saw what his uncle did, basically drank and ate himself to death. He's like, I don't think that's a good thing to do. But also, by drinking too much, you can be distracted. You know how drunk people can be.
Sure.
They do stupid stuff.
They do.
So his view is, this helps me be more in touch with faith. This helps me be a better leader. So I will give up these things, these material, temporal things, and that will make me better as a person. And I'm more capable of that. So that's a big vow for him, and for the rest of his life, he does not drink alcohol, and he never is seen like wearing gold.
What a guy.
He never wears shiny stuff.
Right.
Which is wild, considering what he's about to do, and the level of power he gets to. And he's just
and
like...
how much access to shiny stuff
he has all the shiny stuff. He could just...
Sure.
I'm gold now. And he never does. Which is awesome. So he's the vizier. That's awesome. He starts establishing power, and he wants to control the city a little, or the country a little better. Unfortunately, there's a massive uprising. Specifically, it said black North African soldiers.
Oh.
Like 50,000 of them rise up in rebellion because they're like, this guy's a foreigner. And he should not be running our country. But apparently, Saladin's really good at what he does because he puts down the rebellion in a couple of months. And this is 50,000 soldiers, not peasants, soldiers.
You say put down, is it not militarily, or is it militarily?
Oh, it's militarily. Okay. He fights. Like, he's out there, he's fighting. He's leading troops. It didn't have a lot of details about, like, the tactics, and I didn't, like, dig into a book specifically just about this rebellion. But I'm imagining if you're fighting, like, a several-month-long campaign against that many soldiers, it's either decisive battles or a ton of really fast action.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to keep track of everything.
I thought maybe it was diplomacy.
He probably used a balance because he was good at talking to people and getting things to work out. As we see, that's how he becomes vizier, is he's doing some moving and shaking. So he gets the rebellion handled and then immediately starts kicking the crap out of the crusaders that are in Egypt. He besieges a bunch of cities. Which one was the big one? Durham in 1170, which was a major crusader stronghold, crushes it, drives them out. So he's the boss now of Egypt. Sure. But there's a kind of a nagging question. Because he is technically a servant of Nur ad-Din, but he also serves the Caliph Al-Din. And Al-Din and Nur ad-Din don't like each other.
Yeah.
And they serve, Nur ad-Din is in this different caliphate, and he's a Sunni leader, and he's a king. And Al-Din is like supposed to be this king, ruler, pope guy. So there's always these questions of where does his loyalty lie? Where does Saladin's loyalty lie? And technically it's supposed to lie with both of them.
Perfect.
But they're at odds. So that's a problem.
So long as they don't talk to each other, we'll be fine.
The problem seems to solve itself.
Oh.
In 1171, 13th September, Al-Adid dies. Apparently, when he died, he sent for Saladin to talk to him. Saladin refused to see him. He thought it was a trap.
Yeah, sounds like a trap.
Or it could be seen as disloyalty to the Abbasid caliph by going and seeing this other caliph and doing all this stuff. So he thinks it's this whole scheme. And it was just so he would take care of his children.
Aw.
That's all Aldid wanted.
That's all I wanted.
I just want to make sure my kids are taken care of when I die.
Aw.
There are rumors that he was assassinated or poisoned by Saladin. Nobody ever verified it. Quite possible.
Sure.
Quite possible that somebody in Saladin's family or in his court was like, so this is a problem. We're going to get rid of it. We just have to kill one guy. And it's a lot easier to kill him than Nur ad-Din because that guy's way over there in an army. And this guy's just here. And we just kill him. Now you're in charge. Hooray!
You're welcome, boss.
Worked out. So Saladin becomes like the sole ruler. And because the caliph is dead and doesn't have an heir, it ends the Fatimid Caliphate.
Oh.
They're done. They're gone.
Okay.
After centuries.
Sorry, pals.
And the Abbasids come in and they take over. So these guys are super happy because they just got a huge swath of territory added to their land. And like, ha-ha! Yeah! Good job, Saladin. You're the best. And he winds up getting the caliph's support. Like, that guy just loves Saladin now. He's like, good job, dude. You did everything you're supposed to do. You served your master well. You served God. You served the people. You're doing all this great stuff. Hooray!
Real lovely, babe. Here's a gold star.
Pretty much. Well, they make him, in essence, he becomes the Sultan. He's the head governor of Egypt. Now, this sticks in Nur ad-Din's craw a little bit. Because Saladin's supposed to work for him.
Yeah.
So he should be in charge of that. That should be his land now.
Okay.
And Saladin is like, well, I work for you, man. I just
Don't
run
worry.
all of this.
Just so happens, I mean...
Nur ad-Din starts gathering an army.
why are you doing that, man?
A really big army.
No, man.
From like all across his land.
Yeah, play it
from
cool, man. Play it
neighbors
cool.
and everything else. And the caliph is like, oh, no. So Joey, Yusuf, old buddy, they go to Saladin and they say, we think he's going to kill you.
Oh, man.
We're pretty sure he wants you to die.
Oh,
now, Saladin has had to deal with assassins for most of his life.
Who hasn't?
After he became the Vizier, like a dozen guys tried to murder him, and then he figured out who was in charge and had the guy arrested and executed. And he's been dealing with assassination attempts for a very long time. This is a very popular thing. And there's a group of people called the Assassins, the Hashashin.
Do they have a creed?
Yes. Ooh. Assassin's Creed, the video game, is literally based on these guys. These are real people.
Yeah.
They had the old man on the mountain. That was a whole thing, that they had this mountain stronghold. And they are used as weapons throughout this part of the world. The Crusaders use them. The Muslims use them. Everybody uses them. And they sometimes just kill people to destabilize
Just for fun.
They're their own like moral and religious cult. They have all sorts of rules. And it's very mysterious, which is why everybody uses them for video games and movies and books because of this. So Saladin doesn't like these guys because they've been hired to kill him before. Yeah. And he realizes they're a destabilizing factor. So that goes in his mind as, I'll deal with you later.
Okay.
Nur ad-Din is planning this massive attack. He's got this huge army. And on the 15th of May, 1174, when he's about to lead the army out, he dies.
Who dies?
Nur ad-Din.
No, well...
We're not really sure why.
Okay.
He might have been poisoned. He might have been murdered. He might have just died. There's a lot of different versions of what happened, as always, with most of this stuff.
But it sounds like another problem solved itself, though.
Yeah, another problem solved itself. Could have been the assassins. Who knows? Could have been Saladin was like, kill him. But Nur ad-Din died, and Saladin is kind of put in this weird position. It's considered hypocritical and oath-breaking and sacrilegious, basically, for him to invade Syria and conquer it.
I shouldn't.
Because it was his master's land. It's one thing if he fought Nur ad-Din, if Nur ad-Din attacked him. Yeah. That's defense. That's fine. But to invade your sworn leader's land, not cool. The problem is, he has no successor. Nur ad-Din didn't have a successor. He doesn't have anybody sitting behind him. And he's a border country with the Crusader states.
So who's in charge anyway? Anybody
could come in and take the land.
Yeah.
And a bunch of people think Saladin is perfectly suited to rule. He's smart. He's in his 30s. He's middle of life. He's ready to go. He's proven he's a capable leader, a capable administrator, and a very strong man of faith who is obviously not bought off by any vice, which is a huge deal.
Yeah, let's put him in charge.
So he takes like 700 horsemen basically. So he's moving fast and light for the time, and basically sprints to Syria. And he's like, so I don't want to conquer anything, but I would like to take over the thing.
Please.
And according to the majority of sources, emirs, which are regional commanders, start flocking to him with their armies. And they're like, oh, yeah, we saw what you did in Egypt, and you were a loyal servant of Nur ad-Din. We're on your side. Cities start to respect him, and he rides to Damascus, and the doors are just open for him, and the crowds go nuts. Wow. And he's super happy because he loves Damascus. So he's back in the city he loves. He gets to go to the gardens that he loved, that he grew up in, and he's very, very happy with this result. And basically all of Syria says, yeah, we work for you now.
Yay.
So now he owns Egypt and Syria. He's the first guy to be Sultan of both at the same time.
Nice.
Awesome achievement. He doesn't stop there. Remember the assassins?
He
doesn't like them.
No.
So
Can't trust them.
He has a personal campaign against them to destroy the assassins.
Okay.
So that's what occupies a lot of his time in 1175. Now that he's dealing with the internal matters and he's expanded his control over all of Syria, all of Egypt, he reaches all the way to Arabia at one point. So he's got this huge chunk of land which surrounds the Crusader states. Now it's time to deal with them because he's sick of their crap. He begins a campaign against all of Jerusalem, all the Crusaders. They all got to go. His attacks are largely started because there's a famous Templar named Reynald de Chatillon. He's a Frenchman.
Sounds French.
Particularly vicious bastard. He would attack Muslim convoys and massacre the people, even though they were largely peasants. There's one story where he killed Saladin's sister. That was made that was incorporated into a movie called Kingdom of Heaven, and it's not an amazing movie, but there's some parts of it that are really cool. Like the guy who portrays Saladin is awesome. The guy who plays Reynald de Chatillon is amazing, and I think he's now an Academy Award nominee for sure. Brendan Gleeson, who's just in the Banshees of Inisherin. He's great. But he's Reynald de Chatillon, and he's a monster. Apparently, people would throw themselves down and beg in his language to not die. They'd start praying, and he would deliberately insult the Prophet Muhammad and then massacre them.
Yikes.
So some of the survivors got back to Saladin and told him about this. And Saladin, being a very strong man of faith and a defender of the people, is furious and swears a personal oath to kill that guy.
Okay.
Now, Reynald runs this castle called Crac de Chevalier. Crac de Chevalier is here, because we got a picture. We haven't done a picture in a while. Is a very strong fortress that is almost impossible to crack. And he can't. Saladin tries to. And the new king of Jerusalem, Baldwin, who's a great man, but not... he was sick a lot.
Okay.
I think he had leprosy. At least in... Yeah. So... But Saladin respected him, and everybody at this point now is respecting Saladin because they've seen what he's done. That he's risen through these ranks from nothing to now he's the Sultan of Syria and Egypt, and he's uniting different Muslim factions, which is crazy and something that hasn't been done in a very, very long time. And he's pointing it all at them.
Yes.
So he hates Reynald de Chatillon,
yeah.
And he really wants him gone.
Can't crack it, though.
But he can't get through the castle. And Baldwin shows up. They have a truce. Their armies disband, and they go in different directions. But Baldwin eventually dies, and he's replaced by King Guy de Lusignan. Guy de Lusignan is a jerk. He's head of the Knights Templar, or one of the heads of the Knights Templar. He's got a huge ego, and he thinks that his army cannot be beaten by anybody. So he basically challenges Saladin to battle, an open field battle.
Oh. And
Saladin's like, okay, but I know where everything is, and I have been scouting and planning for a very, very long time. So Saladin leads a massive, massive army into Crusader territory, and he leads de Lusignan's army out into the desert. He poisons every well along the way.
Oh.
And then they meet at a place called the Horns of Hattin. It's basically two big hills that are fairly rocky and unpleasant. Guy's army are knights. They wear heavy chainmail, big helmets.
Yeah.
That covered, like they're the ones with the little narrow slits and just little holes. And it's the desert. It's like 90 degrees.
Ooh, that pressure cooks.
Yeah, this is in the midst of July in Jerusalem. It's a desert in July. So it's probably like 100 degrees. And these guys are wearing 60, 70 pounds of gear.
Steamy.
Massive arm, like just, ugh. And they're slogging. And then the foot soldiers are wearing, most of their armor is felt. Padded felt. So imagine wearing a thick padded felt, maybe with some leather coat, and you're walking through the desert, and your shoes are leather. It's just your sacks around your feet, basically. He leads their army out, encircles it, and annihilates it.
Yeah, well, they're all sweaty.
Yes. Well, they're sweaty and tired, and they haven't had water, and they're just dying. So he captures the king. He captures the piece of the true cross, which is a relic of questionable authenticity, we'll say.
It can be used as a toothpick if you want.
Yes, and I think a lot of Christians would be mad if you did it. But apparently this was a piece of the cross that Jesus was crucified on. He also captures Renald de Chatillon, and he personally kills him.
Oh,
because he's pissed at that guy. It's usually not okay to kill prisoners, but he makes an exception because he's no, not you. You are a bastard, and the things you have done are awful. So dead. He kills him. So that guy's gone. Then after that, on the 2nd of October, same year, he gathers his forces and he takes Jerusalem. And everybody is expecting him to kill everyone and everything because he's basically made a vow that he's going to.
Yeah.
In revenge for the same thing that the Crusaders did. Instead, he lets them all go.
Surprise.
They have to buy their way out. So it's basically, yeah, you can leave, but you got to leave your money behind. I got to pay my armies.
Sure.
So he lets them go and he guides them into other Christian territory with his army so that they're protected, which is nuts because normally they'd be like, yeah, you can go. You can go. How far away are they? Half a mile? All right, send out some riders with some arrows and just pick them off. Just make their lives hell. Instead, he sends his troops to make sure they get to safety. He's taken Jerusalem and he's ended the kingdom of Jerusalem. Then in 1189, is when the Third Crusade starts and Richard the Lionheart shows up and he battles with him. The Battle of Arsuf, Richard wins, but Saladin basically gets to keep control over all the land he's gotten, including Jerusalem. So after Saladin captures Jerusalem, they never lose it. The Crusaders never take it back. It's not taken until like hundreds of years later when Europeans show up with a bunch of guns and take it. And Britain's like, we own this now. And then we give it to Israel and make it its own country. Ha! Because we're Britain. Aren't we magnanimous with our colonies? Ha! That's Britain.
Yeah.
Saladin dies on the 4th of March, 1193. Penniless.
Oh, well, that was how he wanted it, right?
He's the king of all of this land. He is never deposed. He does not lose power, but it's because he gave all of his wealth away to his people. Not his children, not his lords, not his knights, the people.
Yeah, okay.
He was so poor, there was no money for a funeral. So the people put together a thing and they buried him properly.
Got card. Yeah.
Yep, and then, put a little... not sure how we're supposed to do this. He didn't really leave any wishes because he was just like, well, when I die, I die. Apparently, he died in his gardens in Damascus.
Oh, how nice.
He's like the Godfather.
Yeah.
He's playing with his grandkids and dies. But yeah, it's kind of amazing that this guy, so he's in his 50s when he dies, which is young. But apparently, he was exhausted from constant campaigning and leading, bouncing between Egypt, Syria, the Holy Land, everywhere, all over the place, trying to run countries and getting people together. His kingdom doesn't live beyond him very long. It's the Ayyubid dynasty.
Yeah.
Because this was a great man, and oftentimes throughout history, when you have a great person guiding things, it kind of falls apart after they're gone. They don't have the same charisma. They don't have the same ability.
Yeah.
But I just find him absolutely fascinating because he's this man of great faith who actually follows through on things and is able to show mercy to his opponents, except for the worst of the worst. He captures kings and then he lets them go. He captures a city that was the site of one of the greatest massacres in his people's history, and he shows mercy and forgiveness. He even reopened the churches. Like he took the main church and made it a mosque, But he'd still let like Christians come and worship there, and then he let the Jews come and worship at the synagogues, and he let people like be people, which is wild and very different. So that's Saladin becoming the Vizier of Egypt. It was a very long and arduous process to get there, and then he becomes Sultan of all the stuff. And I went over, and I don't care. Saladin's awesome.
Will just doesn't care about the rules.
Sorry, I break the rules all the time now.
That was all about Saladin. Well done. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
That's that area of the world is peaceful now. Good.
Yep. Yeah, it's good that they sorted it all out back then, so that it would be totally nice and peaceful for everybody now. Yeah. It's totally cool. And nobody's ever fought over Jerusalem ever since.
Yep.
It's been great.
Problem solved.
Problem solved.
All right. Well, that was This Week in History. As always, if you have any comments or concerns or things, you just put that in the thing. Make sure you like and subscribe. Share this with other people.
Tell other people.
Tell other people. That'd be great.
If we get 100 followers, we get a cookie.
I think so. Yeah.
Don't we get something if we get like 100 people? It's something about the web address or something.
Yeah, something happens.
And then if we get thousands of people, we can monetize it.
Something more happens then.
And then we can do even cooler stuff like
paint. You can tune into us pretty much every week we do this. And next week we'll be discussing an event in Russia.
Yep.
April 5th, 1242, the Battle on the Ice.
The Battle on the Ice. I've been wanting to do this one for a year.
I was very excited.
It's pretty neat.
Well, we'll find out next week.
Yeah.
Ready?
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, guys.